0530 hours, eastern coastline, disputed territory. Thick gray fog rolls off the ocean, obscuring the jagged tree line where the dense jungle meets the black sand. The tide pulls back with a rhythmic hiss, revealing patches of wet, dark sediment and scattered driftwood. Seabirds circle silently overhead, their cries swallowed by the heavy, damp air that clings to everything. In the distance, the low, vibrating hum of heavy diesel engines pulses through the water, growing louder and deeper with every passing second. A reconnaissance scout, hidden deep within the dune grass, shifts his weight, pressing his thermal binoculars against his eyes. The gray wall of mist begins to break. A massive, flat-bottomed shape emerges from the gloom, pushing a wall of white water ahead of its bow. It is a landing ship, dark and imposing against the pale morning light. The vessel grinds onto the sandbar. The sound of steel scraping against rock screeches across the beach, cutting through the sound of the surf. Massive hydraulic pumps whine as the bow doors split open, like a predator unhinging its jaw. A heavy steel ramp crashes down into the surf, splashing salt water 10 feet into the air. Green signal lights flash from the bridge. The engines roar as the first heavy transport truck rolls down the ramp. Its tires churn through the wet sand, struggling for traction before gripping the harder earth. Another vehicle follows immediately, its suspension groaning under the weight of ammunition crates. Soldiers jump from the sides, boots splashing into the shallows. They sprint toward the dunes, assault rifles raised, scanning the silent tree line for threats. The beach transforms from a desolate strip of sand into a hive of mechanical chaos. More ships break the fog line behind the first, their silhouettes looming like iron mountains, preparing to vomit more war machines onto the shore. 0550 hours, 15 miles inland, dense tropical jungle. The canopy creates a permanent twilight, blocking out the rising sun. Rain begins to fall, tapping softly against the broad, waxy leaves before dripping to the muddy floor. The air smells of wet rot and ozone. A wall of camouflage netting tears away from a hidden depression in the earth. A heavy diesel engine coughs to life, spewing black smoke that instantly mixes with the mist. A six-wheeled armored truck lurches forward, crushing saplings and vines under its massive tires. Mud flies in thick clods as the vehicle fights for traction on the slick jungle trail. It reaches a clearing, a straight, hard-packed dirt road specifically surveyed for this moment. The driver slams the brakes. The vehicle skids slightly, sliding sideways before the tires bite into the gravel and halt. The rear of the truck transforms. Hydraulic stabilizer legs extend from the chassis, driving steel feet into the soft soil until the suspension locks rigid. The entire frame stiffens. The armored cab is sealed tight against the humidity. Inside, the fire control officer sits bathed in the glow of a hardened tactical display. His fingers fly across a ruggedized keyboard. Green text scrolls rapidly across the screen. "Target package received," the radio operator barks. His voice is distorted by static, but clear. "Amphibious landing zone. Grid 4549. High priority." The launch pod on the back of the truck wakes up. It whirs with a high-pitched mechanical whine, rotating 40 degrees to the east. The thick hydraulic pistons hiss as they push the nose of the pod upward, aiming at a patch of empty gray sky. The pod locks into place at a steep angle. Rain hammers harder now, drumming a frantic, deafening rhythm against the armored glass of the cab. Water streams down the windshield, blurring the view of the jungle ahead. The fire control officer flips a red safety cover on the console. A single black button sits exposed. He watches the digital timer count down on his screen. The vehicle stands as a statue of potential violence, perfectly still amidst the falling rain, waiting for the second hand to align. 0600 hours, fire position alpha. The digital clock hits 0. The fire control officer pushes the black button. A massive electrical charge surges through the firing circuits. The truck shudders violently, rocking on its hydraulic stabilizers as if hit by a hammer. Ignition. A blinding white flash erupts from the rear of the launcher. A pillar of fire blasts backward, incinerating the wet jungle floor and turning the rain into instant steam. The first rocket tears free from its canister. It accelerates instantly, screaming upward on a column of solid fuel exhaust. The roar is physical. It shakes the leaves off the trees and rattles the teeth of the crew inside the cab. 1 second later, the second rocket launches. Then the third. Then the fourth. 6 streaks of white smoke scar the gray sky. The rockets punch through the low cloud layer, disappearing into the overcast gloom. They arc high, reaching the apex of their flight path miles above the Earth. Small guidance fins on the nose cones snap open. The warheads adjust their trajectory, nosing down toward the ocean. Gravity takes over. They accelerate to supersonic speeds, breaking the sound barrier with a crack that echoes over the canopy. 06:01 hours. The beachhead.
Forward on the starboard side.
A deckhand on the landing ship pauses. He looks up. The heavy diesel engines of the trucks drown out the world. But he hears something else. A high-pitched, tearing sound. It sounds like canvas ripping, but louder, much louder. It grows rapidly, from a whisper to a scream. He drops his cargo strap. He screams a warning, but his voice is lost in the noise. The soldiers on the sand freeze. They look at the sky. The clouds part. 6 black dots fall from the heavens, trailing wisps of vapor. They are falling faster than the eye can track. The scream of the incoming ordnance becomes deafening, vibrating the steel deck of the ship and shattering the morning air. 06:02 hours. The beachhead. The first warhead strikes. It slams into the roof of the lead armored truck, punching through the steel plating like a needle through cloth. It detonates inside the chassis. The vehicle vanishes. A sphere of orange plasma expands outward, vaporizing the cab and the driver instantly. The shockwave hits the wet sand, turning the ground into a liquid ripples. Heavy truck tires detach from axles and fly 200 feet down the beach, spinning wildly. The sound of the explosion arrives a fraction of a second later. A crack so loud, it ruptures eardrums and shatters the bridge windows of the landing ship. The second rocket lands 10 meters to the left. It impacts a cluster of infantry unloading ammunition crates. The earth erupts. Dirt, sand, and jagged steel fragments spray the area. Soldiers are lifted off their feet and hurled backward, ragdolling into the surf. The third rocket finds the fuel tanker. The warhead strikes the rear tank. The double-walled steel ruptures. Thousands of gallons of diesel fuel ignite in a millisecond. A massive fireball rolls upward, consuming the tanker and the 2 vehicles behind it. The heat is intense enough to blister paint on the ship's hull 50 yards away. Black, oily smoke billows into the sky, choking the air. Chaos reigns. A jeep, stripped of its frame by the blast, crashes upside down onto the landing ramp, blocking the exit. Burning fuel sprays across the deck of the landing ship. Sailors scramble, slipping on the slick, fire-covered steel, dragging hoses toward the inferno. The orderly unloading operation dissolves into a hellscape of burning metal and screaming men. 06:05 hours. The landing ship deck. Thick, black smoke from the burning fuel tanker rolls over the vessel, blinding the bridge crew. The ship's alarm clacks and screams, a rhythmic, piercing wail that cuts through the roar of the fire. A fourth rocket screams out of the smoke. It misses the beach and slams directly into the open well deck of the landing ship. The warhead punches through the reinforced steel plating of the main deck. It detonates deep inside the vehicle hold. The explosion blows the heavy steel hatch covers into the sky. They cartwheel through the air, crashing down into the ocean with massive splashes. The force of the blast buckles the ship's keel. The entire vessel shudders violently, lifting the bow out of the sand before slamming it back down. The sound of tearing metal screams across the water as the hull plates shear apart. Inside the hold, a parked armored personnel carrier is thrown sideways by the overpressure. It crushes a row of supply crates against the bulkhead. Fire suppression pipes rupture, spraying water uselessly onto the burning wreckage. Seawater floods in through the split hull, mixing with leaking oil and blood. On the bridge, the captain grabs the railing to stay standing. The ship lists heavily to the starboard side. "All engines back, full!" he screams into the voice pipe. "Get us off this beach!" The helmsman slams the throttle levers backward. The massive propellers churn the water, kicking up mud and sand. The ship vibrates, straining to pull away, but the twisted bow ramp is buried deep in the sandbar. It does not move. The vessel groans under the strain, trapped and burning. 0610 hours. The beachhead. The thunder of the rocket impacts fades, replaced by the popping crackle of cooking off ammunition. The beach is a graveyard of burning steel. Thick, acrid smoke hangs low over the sand, stinging the eyes and throat. On the shoreline, survivors crawl through the wet, gray sludge. A sergeant drags a wounded private behind the smoking ruin of a jeep. He rips open a medical pouch. His hands are slick with oil and blood. He wraps a tourniquet around the soldier's leg and twists the windlass tight. The soldier screams, thrashing in the sand. The sergeant pins him down, shouting into his face to stay still. 10 yards away, a crate of mortar rounds catches fire. The heat destabilizes the explosives. The crate detonates. The blast wave knocks the sergeant flat. Shrapnel shreds the camouflage tarp of a supply tent nearby. A piece of jagged steel, glowing red hot, hisses as it lands in a tidal pool. "Get off the beach!" an officer yells, waving his pistol toward the tree line. "Move! Move!" Panic takes over. Men abandon their heavy packs. They stumble over debris and body parts, sprinting toward the dunes. They slip on the slick metal of the ramp, falling into the water, scrambling back up. The disciplined landing force is broken. It is a rout. The only sound is the roar of the fire and the screams of the dying. 26:15 hours. Fire position Alpha. The white smoke from the launch still hangs thick in the heavy jungle air. A beacon pointing directly to the hidden clearing. The silence returns for a split second, broken only by the hiss of cooling metal. Inside the armored cab, the radio operator shouts a single word. "Displace!" The driver slams the transmission into gear. He does not wait for the all clear. The fire control officer flips a toggle switch. The empty launch pod whines, rotating back to its travel position. It slams down onto the chassis lock. The heavy hydraulic stabilizer legs retract, pulling out of the deep mud with a wet, sucking sound. The truck drops heavily onto its suspension. The engine roars to the red line. The massive tires spin, churning the wet earth into a brown slurry before finding grip. The vehicle lurches forward, smashing through the camouflage netting. It accelerates down the narrow dirt track, swerving around tree trunks, branches whipping against the windshield. 10 seconds later, a high-pitched whistle cuts through the rain. An enemy counter-battery artillery shell slams into the center of the clearing. It detonates exactly where the truck stood moments ago. The blast shreds the surrounding trees, sending splinters the size of spears flying through the air. Mud and rock shower the empty firing position. The rocket truck is gone. It vanishes into the deep green shadows of the jungle, leaving only tire tracks and the smell of diesel exhaust. 0630 hours. The beachhead. The sun burns through the remaining fog, illuminating the carnage in harsh, unforgiving light. The tide pushes inward, reclaiming the blood-soaked sand. The ocean is no longer blue. It is a murky swirl of oil, ash, and red sediment. The landing ship sits broken on the sandbar. It lists heavily to starboard, its keel buried deep in the grit. Black smoke continues to pour from the shattered well deck, rising in a thick, vertical column that marks the grave of the operation. A piece of the superstructure groans, metal fatigue finally winning, and collapses into the sea with a dull splash. On the beach, the waves lap against the charred skeleton of the fuel tanker. The water hisses as it touches the cooling steel. The line of supply trucks is gone, replaced by a twisted spine of scrap metal. Tires have melted into black puddles of rubber. Ammunition crates float in the surf, bobbing alongside helmets and driftwood. There is no shooting, no shouting. The survivors have retreated into the jungle or lie still on the sand. A solitary seagull lands on the barrel of a submerged tank gun. It pecks at a piece of floating debris. The only sound is the rhythmic, indifferent crashing of the waves against the wreck. 0640 hours. The skies above the jungle. A low, buzzing drone cuts through the cloud layer. It is a hostile surveillance UAV. Hunting. Its camera ball rotates, scanning the dense green canopy below. The lens zooms in, searching for heat signatures of the rocket trucks. The jungle floor is quiet. The rain has stopped, but the trees are still dripping. The drone operator, miles away on a command ship, sees nothing but leaves and mud. The rocket trucks are gone, hidden deep under natural cover, miles from the launch site. The drone banks sharp left. It spots the clearing used for the launch. Fire position Alpha. The ground is scorched black. Trees are splintered from the earlier counter-battery artillery shell, but there is no wreckage. No burning trucks. The operator curses. The target has vanished. He toggles his radio. Visual on launch site. Negative contact. Targets have displaced. Sector clear. 0650 hours. Airspace, over the beachhead. 2 fighter jets scream over the ocean at supersonic speed. The sonic boom hits the water like a hammer. They bank hard, their afterburners glowing orange against the gray sky. They are looking for revenge. The pilots look down at the beach. It is a smoking ruin. The landing ship is a broken toy. The supply column is a black scar on the sand. There are no targets here to save. Orbiting station, the lead pilot says. His voice is tight with frustration. Requesting vector on enemy artillery. Negative, the controller replies. Radar contact lost. Return to base. The pilot grips the stick. He dips his wing, doing one low pass over the burning landing ship. He sees the bodies on the sand. He sees the fuel slick spreading in the water. He pulls back hard on the stick. The jet climbs vertically, punching through the clouds, leaving the devastation behind. They are useless here. The damage is done. 0710 hours. The surf zone. A small rigid-hull inflatable boat, RHIB, motors slowly through the debris field. The water is thick with oil. The engine sputters, clogging on the sludge. 2 rescue swimmers sit on the edge of the boat, scanning the water. There, one yells. He points to a sailor clinging to a floating wooden crate. The sailor is covered in soot, his eyes wide and white against his blackened face. The boat pulls alongside. Strong hands grab the sailor's vest and haul him over the gunwale. He coughs up seawater and oil, collapsing onto the deck. Suddenly, a secondary explosion rips through the beached landing ship. A pocket of trapped ammunition cooks off. Tracer rounds spray wildly into the air and across the water. "Get down!" the coxswain screams. He slams the throttle. The boat lurches away, bouncing over the waves. Debris rains down around them, hot metal hissing as it hits the water. The rescue operation is too dangerous. They turn the boat back toward the open sea.